The great arena of Vorthak Prime stretched across 3 miles of gleaming metal and crystal, its towering walls reaching toward the violet sky. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive stands, their various forms creating a living rainbow of scales, fur, chitin, and energy. The air hummed with excitement and the constant chatter of universal translators working overtime. At the center of this magnificent structure stood the combat assessment platform, a circular stage where the greatest warriors from different worlds demonstrated their species' fighting capabilities. Today was special. Today, representatives from a newly discovered world called Earth would finally show what their kind could do. General Zix-9, a towering Krillian with 4 arms and skin like polished obsidian, stood at the judge's platform. His mandibles clicked with amusement as he watched the various alien species placing their bets. The odds were heavily stacked against the humans. 10,000 credits says the Earth creatures last less than 5 minutes, laughed Commander Vesh, a serpentine naga whose coils could crush starship hulls. Her scales shimmered with built-in armor plating that could deflect plasma bolts. 5 minutes? You're being generous, hissed General Throck, whose species had evolved from apex predators on a high-gravity world. His muscles were dense enough to punch through steel, and his reflexes were faster than most computers. These humans have no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no poison. They're just soft pink weaklings. The other alien commanders nodded in agreement. They had studied the preliminary reports about Earth's inhabitants. Humans were remarkably unremarkable. They had no superhuman strength, couldn't fly, possessed no telepathic abilities, and seemed to rely entirely on crude tools and weapons. Their homeworld was a moderate gravity environment with a thin atmosphere. By galactic standards, they were among the most physically unimpressive species ever discovered. I heard they still fight wars with chemical explosives, snorted Captain Zaris, whose rocky hide could withstand nuclear blasts, and their fastest warriors can barely move at subsonic speeds. My grandmother moves faster than that, and she's been dead for 3 centuries. The laughter that erupted from the judge's platform was heard throughout the arena. The crowd joined in, creating a wave of mocking sounds that echoed off the crystal walls. Even the betting computers seemed to chuckle as they automatically adjusted the odds further against the humans. Perhaps we should give them a children's division, suggested Admiral Corthex, whose tentacles were tipped with neurotoxin sacs. It would only be fair. Down in the preparation chambers beneath the arena, the human delegation could hear the laughter filtering through the ventilation systems. The Earth team consisted of 12 individuals, each representing different aspects of human combat capability. There were soldiers, martial artists, athletes, and strategists. Colonel Sarah Martinez, the team leader, maintained her composure, despite the obvious mockery. Her military training had prepared her for psychological warfare, and she knew that underestimation could be turned into an advantage. She looked around at her team, noting the mixture of anger and determination on their faces. "Remember," she said quietly, "they expect us to fail. They think we're weak because we don't have claws or armor or psychic powers. They're about to learn something very important about humanity." Dr. James Chen, a physicist who had helped design some of Earth's most advanced combat systems, nodded grimly. The preliminary scans show that most of these species rely heavily on their natural advantages. They've never had to develop the kind of adaptability we have. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, a former Special Forces operative, cracked her knuckles. Let them laugh. "We've been preparing for this for months. They have no idea what human creativity and training can accomplish." But it was the quiet figure in the corner who drew the most attention from the team. He sat in perfect meditation posture, seemingly unaware of the noise and commotion around him. His name was Kenji Nakamura, and he represented something that the galaxy had never encountered before. Kenji was a master of ninjutsu, trained from childhood in the ancient arts of stealth, combat, and mental discipline. He had volunteered for this mission not for glory or recognition, but because he understood that sometimes the greatest battles were won through patience and preparation, rather than brute force. The aliens above continued their mockery, unaware that they were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. They had spent centuries cataloging and categorizing species based on their obvious physical attributes. Strength, speed, armor, weapons, psychic abilities. These were the metrics they used to measure combat effectiveness. What they didn't understand was that Humans had spent thousands of years learning to overcome exactly these kinds of disadvantages. When early humans faced creatures stronger, faster, and better armed than themselves, they didn't give up. They adapted. They learned. They innovated. They developed techniques that turned weakness into strength, that used an opponent's power against them, that relied on intelligence and training rather than natural gifts. They created fighting styles that could make a small, seemingly defenseless person capable of defeating opponents many times their size and strength. As the laughter above reached its peak, Kenji opened his eyes. They were calm, focused, and utterly without fear. He had meditated on this moment for months, preparing not just his body but his mind for what was to come. He understood that he carried the honor of his entire species into that arena. The arena's announcement system crackled to life, and a booming voice in the galactic common tongue echoed throughout the structure. Citizens of the galaxy, prepare to witness the combat assessment of the species known as humans, from the planet designated Earth, Sol System, Outer Rim. The laughter grew even louder. Alien spectators pointed at the viewing screens showing the human preparation chamber. They saw a group of beings that looked laughably fragile compared to the galactic standard. What they didn't see was the fire burning in human eyes. What they couldn't measure was the strength of human will. And what they were completely unprepared for was the depth of human ingenuity when it came to the art of war. The stage was set. The players were ready, and the galaxy was about to receive its first lesson in what it truly meant to be human. The massive arena doors rumbled open with a sound like distant thunder. Steam and artificial mist poured from the entrance tunnel as spotlights carved through the haze, creating dramatic beams that swept across the combat platform. The crowd's chatter diminished to a low murmur of anticipation and barely contained amusement. Colonel Martinez led the human delegation into the arena, her spine straight and her pace measured. Behind her walked 11 other humans, each representing different aspects of their species' combat capabilities. The contrast between them and previous demonstrations was stark. Earlier that day, the crowd had watched the Gorathian bear warriors, each standing 12 feet tall with natural bone spikes protruding from their arms. They had seen the crystalline collective's living rock formations, beings who could reshape their mineral bodies into weapons at will. The hive mind swarm had sent warriors with 6 arms and reflexes enhanced by shared consciousness. Now they were looking at creatures that barely reached 6 feet in height, with soft skin and no visible natural weapons. The humans wore simple gray uniforms that did nothing to hide their apparent physical limitations. "Look at them," whispered a Vortanian energy being to its companion. "They look like children playing dress-up." The universal translators carried the comment throughout the arena, generating waves of laughter. Some spectators were taking pictures and recording videos, treating the human arrival as a curiosity rather than a serious demonstration. General Zix-9 leaned forward on the judge's platform, his forearms crossed. "Commander Martinez," he announced through the arena's sound system, his voice carrying the tone one might use when addressing a child. "Welcome to the Galactic Combat Assessment Arena. We trust your species understands the nature of these proceedings?" "We do, General," Martinez replied, her voice clear and confident despite the obvious condescension in his tone. "Earth's representatives are ready to demonstrate human combat capabilities." "Splendid," Zix-9 clicked his mandibles again. "Now we've reviewed your species' preliminary data, and we want to ensure you understand what you're facing. This is not a ceremonial demonstration. Our previous participants have included some of the galaxy's most formidable warriors. On the arena's massive screens, highlights from recent demonstrations played. The crowd watched the Thermic clan's lava-skinned warriors melting through solid steel with their bare hands. They saw footage of psionic guild members lifting massive weights through thought alone. The Void Hunters demonstrated their ability to phase in and out of reality, becoming temporarily intangible. Each of these species, continued General Zix-9, has natural advantages that have made them dominant on their homeworlds. Physical superiority, mental powers, technological integration with their biology. Tell me, what natural advantages do humans possess? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the arena, alien spectators leaned forward, genuinely curious about the answer. The betting computers stopped taking wagers temporarily, waiting to hear what the humans would claim as their special abilities. Colonel Martinez stepped forward, her expression unchanged. "General, Humans have developed something perhaps more valuable than natural advantages. We've learned to adapt, to overcome, and to turn disadvantages into strengths. A ripple of amused chittering ran through the crowd. Commander Vesh uncoiled herself slightly, her scales reflecting the arena lights. Adapt? My dear human, adaptation takes millions of years of evolution. You cannot simply adapt your way past superior strength, speed, or psychic power in the span of a single combat. We'll see, Martinez replied simply. Dr. Chen stepped up beside her, tablet in hand. If I may, General, we'd like to propose a series of demonstrations rather than a single combat scenario. This will better showcase the range of human capabilities. Range? General Throck's laughter boomed across the arena. What range could there possibly be? You have 2 arms, 2 legs, basic sensory organs, and no apparent special abilities. Are you going to show us different ways to be physically inadequate? The crowd erupted in laughter again. Some alien species were now openly taking bets on how quickly the humans would concede defeat. The Quantum Collective's representatives were calculating probability matrices that showed human victory chances at less than 0.3%. Sergeant Rodriguez moved to Martinez's other side. Her hands relaxed at her sides despite the obvious hostility. General, we accept whatever challenge format you prefer. Single combat, multiple opponents, environmental hazards, technological restrictions, it doesn't matter to us. Confidence, Admiral Cortex observed, his tentacles swaying with what passed for amusement among his species. I admire that in prey species. Very well. Let's start with something simple. The arena floor began to shift and change, mechanical systems reconfiguring the space. Platforms rose from the ground, creating an obstacle course that required speed, agility, and strength to navigate. The final platform held a combat dummy made from the same materials used in starship armor. A basic test, Zix-9 announced. Navigate the course and disable the target. The current record is held by a Krillian warrior who completed it in 8 seconds. The slowest recorded time before failure was 43 seconds, set by a peaceful diplomatic species who honestly had no business being here. The crowd chuckled at the reference to the unfortunate Tellurian delegates who had stumbled through the course months earlier before politely withdrawing from galactic military consideration. Who among you will attempt this basic assessment? Zix-9 asked. The human team exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to their plan, but they had prepared for various scenarios. Martinez nodded to her team, and surprisingly, it was Kenji who stepped forward. The ninja had remained silent throughout the exchange, studying the arena, the obstacles, and most importantly, the observers. He bowed politely to the judge's platform, a gesture that generated more amused murmurs from the crowd. A ceremonial gesture, observed Commander Vesh. How quaint. Kenji moved to the starting position, his movements fluid and economical. He wore the same gray uniform as the others, but something about his posture suggested a coiled spring waiting to be released. Begin when ready, Zix-9 announced, clearly expecting this to be over quickly. The arena fell silent except for the hum of recording equipment and the soft whisper of environmental systems. Alien eyes focused on the small human figure at the base of the obstacle course. Betting pools closed as final wagers were placed. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Kenji took a single breath, centered himself, and exploded into motion. But it wasn't the kind of motion the aliens expected. This wasn't brute force charging forward or superhuman speed. This was something else entirely. Something that had been refined over centuries of human innovation and dedication. This was the product of a species that had learned to overcome natural limitations through discipline, training, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. The first obstacle was a 12-foot wall. Instead of trying to climb it or jump it, Kenji approached at an angle, planted 1 foot against the surface, and used his momentum to run up the wall itself. He flipped over the top in a movement so fluid it looked like he was defying gravity. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Several alien spectators sat up straighter, their attention caught. The second obstacle was a series of spinning barriers designed to knock climbers off balance. Kenji didn't try to time his way through them or force his way past. Instead, he seemed to flow between them like water, his body twisting and bending in ways that the aliens' physics models hadn't accounted for. By the time he reached the third obstacle, The arena had fallen completely silent. The silence in the arena was deafening. 60,000 alien spectators watched in stunned quiet as the small human figure moved through obstacles that had been designed to challenge beings with superhuman strength and speed. Kenji's movement defied their understanding of physics, biology, and combat mechanics. The third obstacle was a gap spanning 20 feet over a pit filled with energy barriers. Previous contestants had either leaped across using enhanced leg muscles or flown over using natural flight capabilities. The unlucky ones had tried to swing across on provided cables. Kenji did something none of them had seen before. He approached the edge at full speed, planted his hands on the rim, and used his forward momentum to vault across the gap in a controlled flip that carried him to the other side with precise accuracy. He landed in a crouch that immediately flowed into his next movement. General Zix-9's mandibles hung open. His forearms remained frozen in their crossed position, as his mind struggled to process what he was witnessing. How did he began, then stopped. Impossible, whispered Commander Vesh. That leap should have required twice his body weight in muscle mass. The fourth obstacle was a series of swinging hammers, each weighing several tons and moving in complex patterns. They were designed to test reflexes and timing against opponents who might have predictive abilities or enhanced sensory perception. Kenji approached the hammers without slowing down. As the first massive weight swept toward him, he didn't dodge in the expected direction. Instead, he dropped into a slide that carried him under the hammer's arc, then immediately rolled to avoid the second one. His movement was so smooth that he seemed to be dancing with the deadly weights rather than avoiding them. But it was what happened next that made the crowd gasp collectively. The fifth obstacle was designed to test raw destructive power. A series of metal barriers, each progressively thicker, stood between the contestant and the final target. Previous warriors had smashed through them with brute force, melted them with energy projection, or dissolved them with acid secretions. Kenji stopped in front of the first barrier, a steel plate 6 inches thick. The arena held its breath as he examined it calmly. Then, in a movement so fast that the recording equipment almost missed it, he struck the metal with the edge of his hand. The steel didn't just break. It didn't bend or crack. The precision strike created a fracture pattern that ran through the entire plate, causing it to fall apart along stress lines that Kenji had identified and exploited in an instant. "What just happened?" demanded Admiral Cortex, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "What did he do to the barrier?" Dr. Chen, watching from the human delegation area, smiled for the first time since entering the arena. He used the metal's own structure against it. Years of training taught him to identify weak points and apply force with surgical precision. The second barrier was made of a crystalline composite that could withstand plasma cannon fire. Kenji studied it for exactly 3 seconds, then struck it at a specific point with his knuckles. The crystal developed a hairline crack that spread instantly throughout the entire structure, causing it to shatter like glass. The third barrier was a force field generator, a wall of pure energy that should have been impossible to break through with physical force alone. Kenji approached it slowly, his hand extended. When his fingers touched the energy barrier, something extraordinary happened. The field flickered and died. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. General Throck stood up from his chair, his massive frame trembling with disbelief. "That's impossible. Energy barriers don't respond to physical contact. What technology is he using?" Colonel Martinez stepped forward to address the judge's platform. "No technology, General. What you're seeing is the result of human understanding of energy flow and biological manipulation. Our martial arts include techniques for disrupting electrical and energy systems through precise application of bioelectric fields." "Bioelectric fields?" Commander Vesh's scales rippled with nervous energy. "You're saying he manipulated the barrier with his own body's electricity?" "Among other things," Martinez replied calmly. By now, Kenji had reached the final target, the armored combat dummy that had withstood attacks from some of the galaxy's most powerful warriors. It was made from materials designed to survive starship combat, reinforced with energy shielding and structural supports. The crowd leaned forward collectively as Kenji stood before the target. He took a stance that looked almost casual to alien eyes, but every human in the delegation recognized it immediately. It was the opening position of a kata that had been perfected over centuries, a form that incorporated not just physical technique but mental focus and spiritual energy. Kenji's breathing became visible in the arena's lights as he centered himself. Then, with movements that flowed like water but struck like lightning, he began his attack. His first strike hit the dummy's center mass with his palm. The impact created a sound like distant thunder, and visible shockwaves rippled through the air around the target. The dummy rocked on its foundation but held. His second strike came from a spinning kick that hit with the force of a sledgehammer, but the contact point was so precise that all the energy transferred directly into the target's weak points. Hairline cracks appeared in the armor plating. The third strike was a series of rapid punches, each one building on the damage from the previous impacts. Kenji's hands moved so fast they became blurs, striking with the precision of a computer and the power of a jackhammer. The final strike was devastating in its simplicity. Kenji drew back his fist, focused his entire being into a single point of contact, and struck the dummy with everything he had learned in a lifetime of training. The armored target exploded, not metaphorically. It literally flew apart, pieces of advanced armor plating scattering across the arena floor. The force field generators sparked and died. The structural supports crumpled like paper. The arena fell into absolute silence. Kenji straightened from his final stance, bowed politely to the judge's platform, and walked calmly back to the human delegation. His expression remained serene, as if he had just completed a routine training exercise, rather than demonstrating capabilities that had left the galaxy's military experts speechless. The timer on the arena's scoreboard showed his completion time, 4.7 seconds. He had broken the previous record by more than 3 seconds, using no enhanced strength, no energy weapons, no psychic powers, and no technology beyond his own trained body and disciplined mind. General Zix-9 finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "How is this possible?" Dr. Chen stepped forward again, his tablet displaying readouts from sensors that had been monitoring Kenji's performance. "General, what you've just witnessed is the result of human adaptation taken to its logical extreme. When our species faced stronger, faster, better-armed opponents, we didn't just accept defeat. We studied them. We learned their weaknesses. We developed techniques to overcome superior force through superior knowledge. But the energy manipulation," Admiral Cortex protested, "the precision strikes, the speed calculations, these require capabilities beyond baseline organic intelligence." "Do they?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez. "Or do they just require dedication, training, and the willingness to push beyond what others consider possible?" The betting computers across the arena were going haywire, recalculating odds that no longer made any mathematical sense. Alien spectators sat in stunned silence trying to process what they had witnessed, and in the judges' platform, the galaxy's most experienced military commanders were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated the small, soft, apparently weaponless species from the outer rim. The aftermath of Kenji's demonstration stretched into long, uncomfortable minutes. The arena's advanced cleaning systems worked frantically to clear away the debris from the destroyed combat dummy while technicians scrambled to understand how their supposedly indestructible target had been reduced to scrap metal by bare hands. General Zix-9 conferred hurriedly with his fellow judges, their various forms huddled together in heated discussion. The crowd remained unusually quiet, the earlier mockery replaced by nervous murmurs and confused speculation. "There has to be an explanation," insisted Commander Vesh, her scales flashing rapid color changes that indicated severe agitation. "Hidden technology, genetic enhancement, some kind of trickery." "The sensors detected no artificial augmentation," reported Admiral Cortex, studying his datapad with obvious frustration. "No energy weapons, no force field generators, no cybernetic implants. According to our instruments, that human achieved those results using only his natural biology." "Then your instruments are malfunctioning," snapped General Throck. "No organic being can manipulate energy fields with their bare hands. It violates fundamental physics." Dr. Chen, overhearing the heated discussion, approached the judge's platform with Colonel Martinez beside him. "Generals, if I may offer some clarification?" "Please do," Zix-9 said curtly. "Because what we just witnessed should be impossible according to every combat doctrine in our databases." Chen activated his tablet, displaying biosensor readings from Kenji's performance. "What you saw wasn't a violation of physics, General. It was an application of principles that your species may not have explored. Humans have spent thousands of years studying the interaction between mind, body, and energy. Elaborate, demanded Commander Vesh. Every living being generates bioelectric fields, Chen explained. Most species use these for basic nervous system function, but humans discovered that with proper training, these fields can be focused and directed. We call it ki, chi, or internal energy depending on the cultural tradition. Admiral Corthex's tentacles writhed skeptically. You're describing fantasy, not science, is it? Martinez interjected. Your own psionic guild members manipulate energy through thought alone. How is that fundamentally different from manipulating energy through disciplined physical training? Before any of the judges could respond, a new voice cut through the discussion. Perhaps a more direct demonstration is in order. The arena fell silent as a massive figure emerged from the VIP section of the stands. It was Warlord Krex, the reigning champion of the Galactic combat circuit. Standing nearly 15 feet tall and weighing over a ton, Krex was a genetic fusion of the galaxy's most dangerous predator species. His arms ended in razor-sharp claws that could slice through diamond. His hide was reinforced with metallic scales, and his reflexes had been enhanced through cybernetic integration. Krex had not been defeated in combat for over 50 years. He was the standard by which all galactic warriors measured themselves, a living weapon who had earned his reputation by dismantling opponents from dozens of different worlds. Warlord Krex, General Zix-9 stammered, clearly not expecting this development. This is an assessment, not a formal challenge. Assessments can be deceiving, Krex replied, his voice carrying the gravelly undertones of multiple vocal cords. I've seen clever tricks before. Illusions, misdirection, hidden technology. What I haven't seen is whether these humans can fight. The crowd erupted in excited chatter. The prospect of watching Warlord Krex in action was rare, and seeing him face the mysterious humans who had just defied all expectations was irresistible. Warlord, Colonel Martinez said diplomatically, we came here for assessment and demonstration, not formal combat. Krex's massive head swiveled toward her, his predator's eyes focusing with laser intensity. Then you refuse the challenge? You admit your performance was merely spectacle? The question hung in the air like a trap. Refuse, and the humans would be dismissed as clever frauds. Accept, and they would be facing the most dangerous warrior in known space. What are the terms? Martinez asked carefully. Simple, Krex rumbled. Single combat. No weapons except what nature provided. No armor except natural hide. Fight until one surrenders or cannot continue. The judges' platform erupted in concerned voices. Warlord, these beings appear to have unusual abilities, but they're still baseline organics, protested Admiral Corthex. A direct confrontation with you could be fatal. That, Krex said, baring teeth that could bite through steel, is their concern, not mine. Kenji stepped forward from the human delegation. His calm demeanor hadn't changed despite the obvious threat posed by the towering alien warrior. I accept your challenge, Warlord Krex. Kenji, no, Martinez said sharply. We don't know enough about his capabilities. With respect, Colonel, Kenji replied quietly. I know enough. Dr. Chen moved to Kenji's side, his scientific mind racing. The size differential alone creates impossible odds. His reach advantage, mass ratio, enhanced reflexes are all factors I've considered, Kenji interrupted gently. This is why we're here. To show that humans don't accept impossible odds as insurmountable. Warlord Krex studied the small human with obvious amusement. You are either very brave or very foolish, little warrior. Perhaps both. Perhaps, Kenji agreed with a slight bow. The arena floor reconfigured itself into a simple combat circle, 50 feet in diameter. The crowd pressed forward in their seats, sensing that they were about to witness something unprecedented. Betting computers crashed as they struggled to calculate odds for a matchup that had no historical precedent. As the two fighters took their positions, the size difference was almost comical. Krex towered over Kenji like a mountain over a pebble. His claws gleamed under the arena lights, each one longer than Kenji's entire hand. His cybernetic enhancements hummed with barely contained power. Kenji stood in a relaxed stance, his hands empty, his expression serene. To the alien observers, he looked like a child facing a natural disaster. Begin when ready, announced General Zix-9, though his voice carried obvious reluctance. Krex wasted no time on ceremony. With a roar that shook the arena's superstructure, he launched himself forward, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. His claws swept down in an arc designed to end the fight immediately. What happened next defied every prediction, every analysis, and every assumption the Galactic audience had made. Kenji wasn't there. The human had moved, not with superhuman speed, but with perfect timing and economy of motion. He slipped aside from Krex's charge like smoke, letting the massive alien's own momentum carry him past. As Krex stumbled forward, off balance from his missed attack, Kenji struck. His palm connected with a specific point on the alien's lower back, delivering force in a precisely calculated vector. Krex's cybernetic leg servos sparked and failed. The mighty warlord crashed to one knee, his enhanced reflexes temporarily disrupted by the strategic strike. Impossible, breathed Commander Vesh. How did he know exactly where to hit? The crowd was on its feet now. 60,000 beings watching in absolute fascination as the small human circled the partially disabled Galactic champion. Krex snarled and spun, swiping with claws that could have bisected a starship hull. Again, Kenji wasn't there. And again, his counterattack found exactly the right target. The arena erupted in chaos as spectators realized they were witnessing the impossible. A baseline organic being, using nothing but training and knowledge, was systematically dismantling the most feared warrior in the galaxy. The arena descended into pandemonium as Warlord Krex struggled to understand what was happening to him. His cybernetic enhancements, which had never failed him in 50 years of combat, were malfunctioning one by one under Kenji's precisely placed strikes. How is he targeting the cyber-neural interfaces? Admiral Cortex demanded, his tentacles writhing in agitation. Those connection points are internal, protected by armor plating and redundant shielding. Dr. Chen, monitoring the fight through advanced sensors, shook his head in amazement. He's reading the energy signatures. The cybernetic implants create subtle electromagnetic fields. Kenji's training allows him to perceive and exploit those patterns. Krex roared in fury and pain as another of his enhanced systems failed. His left arm's strength amplifier shut down completely after Kenji's fingers found a pressure point that disrupted the entire neural pathway. The mighty warlord was being systematically reduced to baseline organic capabilities. "This is impossible," General Throck muttered, his own cybernetic implants suddenly feeling vulnerable. No organic being should be able to perceive electromagnetic fields with that precision. "Humans have always been exceptional at pattern recognition," Colonel Martinez replied from the delegation area. "We've simply learned to apply that ability in ways other species haven't explored." In the combat circle, Krex attempted a different strategy. Instead of relying on his failing enhancements, he drew upon his natural predator instincts using raw physical power and cunning. He feinted left, then lunged right with his remaining functional claws. Kenji responded with a technique that made the entire arena gasp. Instead of dodging, he stepped directly into Krex's attack, his hands moving in fluid patterns that seemed to redirect the alien's massive force. Using principles of leverage and momentum that the Galactic military had never encountered, Kenji guided Krex's own strength against him. The result was spectacular. Krex, all 15 feet and 1 ton of him, found himself airborne, flipping through space in a controlled throw that deposited him flat on his back with enough force to crack the arena floor. What did he just do? Commander Vesh's scales had shifted to colors that indicated complete bewilderment. Sergeant Rodriguez smiled grimly. Aikido, the art of using an opponent's force against them. Kenji didn't overcome Krex's strength. He redirected it. Krex rolled to his feet with the fluid grace of a natural predator, but his movements were noticeably slower. His cybernetic systems continued to fail under the cumulative effects of Kenji's attacks, and now his confidence was shaken as well. "You fight like a coward," Krex snarled, trying to provoke the human into a direct confrontation. "You run and hide instead of meeting strength with strength." Kenji's response was delivered in a calm voice that carried clearly across the arena. "A warrior's first duty is to win, not to prove his strength. If my opponent wishes to provide me with force to redirect, I am grateful for the gift." The philosophical nature of the response stunned many in the crowd. They were accustomed to combat being about dominance, aggression, and the imposition of will through superior power. The concept of victory through adaptation and redirection was alien to their understanding. Krex charged again, this time attempting to use his natural agility to overwhelm the human with a flurry of attacks. His claws swept through the air in deadly patterns, each strike capable of cutting through armor plating. Kenji flowed between the attacks like water, his movement so economical that he seemed to be expending no energy at all. But more than that, he began to demonstrate techniques that pushed the boundaries of what the aliens believed possible. His hands moved in complex patterns, striking nerve clusters and pressure points with surgical precision. Each contact point caused specific effects: temporary paralysis, disrupted motor functions, or sensory confusion. It was as if Kenji possessed a complete map of galactic biology, despite having never encountered Krex's hybrid physiology before. "He's reading the bioelectric patterns in real time," Dr. Chen explained to the stunned judges. "Human martial arts include detailed study of anatomy and energy flow. Kenji is extrapolating from basic biological principles to identify vulnerable points." "But Krex's anatomy is a fusion of 12 different species," protested Admiral Cortex. "The complexity should be impossible to analyze in combat conditions." "Should be," agreed Martinez. "But human intuition, combined with years of training, allows for rapid pattern analysis that your computers can't match." In the circle, Kenji had moved beyond simple defensive techniques. He began to demonstrate the offensive applications of his training, using strikes that channeled internal energy to devastating effect. His first energy-focused attack targeted Krex's solar plexus equivalent, a strike that didn't rely on physical force but on the projection of focused bioelectric energy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Krex doubled over as his entire nervous system experienced momentary disruption. The crowd fell silent. Several alien species possessed energy-based attacks, but they required specialized organs, technological enhancements, or psychic abilities. What they were witnessing was a baseline organic generating and directing energy through pure training and mental discipline. Kenji's second energy strike was even more impressive. He placed his palm against Krex's chest and somehow projected his bioelectric field directly into the alien's major organ clusters. Krex's powerful heart stuttered, his enhanced lung capacity failed, and his cybernetic blood filters shut down completely. "Medical intervention may be required," General Zix-9 announced, though his voice carried more awe than concern. But Kenji stepped back, his expression returning to its previous calm. "The demonstration is complete, Warlord. You have fought with honor." Krex, struggling to remain upright as his body system slowly came back online, stared at the human with something approaching respect. "What are you?" "I am human," Kenji replied simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." The warlord shook his massive head. "No. You are something our databases have no classification for. You have defeated me without matching my strength, speed, or technological advantages. You used abilities I didn't know existed." "All organic beings possess these abilities," Kenji said. "Most simply choose not to develop them." The arena erupted in discussion as the implications of that statement sank in. If humans could achieve these capabilities through training alone, what did that say about the potential of other species? What had the galaxy been overlooking in its focus on natural advantages and technological enhancement? General Zix-9 called for order, but his own voice carried a tremor of uncertainty. "The combat assessment is concluded. Warlord Krex, do you require medical attention?" Krex tested his limbs and systems, most of which were gradually coming back online. "No medical intervention required. The human strikes were precise enough to disable without permanent damage." He looked at Kenji with newfound respect, a true warrior's technique. As medical teams checked both fighters, the judges' platform became a storm of heated discussion. Everything they thought they knew about combat effectiveness had been challenged in the span of less than an hour. "We need to reconsider our entire assessment protocol," Admiral Cortex was saying. "If baseline organics can achieve these results through training alone, think of the implications. For military doctrine," added Commander Vesh, "enhanced soldiers with human training methods could revolutionize galactic defense strategies." But it was General Throck who voiced what they were all thinking. "If this is what humans can do now, what will they be capable of with access to galactic technology and resources?" The question hung over the arena like a storm cloud as the full magnitude of what they had witnessed began to sink in. The medical teams finished their scans of both fighters, confirming what everyone had witnessed but few could believe. Warlord Krex, the undefeated champion of the galaxy, had been systematically disabled by a human using nothing but trained biology and mental discipline. All cybernetic systems are intact, but temporarily offline, reported the lead medic, a multi-armed healer caste member whose species specialized in biomechanical integration. The disruption was achieved through precisely targeted electromagnetic interference generated by the human's own bioelectric field. General Zix-9 leaned forward, his forearms gripping the railing of the judge's platform. You're saying he generated electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disrupt military-grade cybernetics using only his biological systems? That's exactly what I'm saying, the medic replied, consulting his instruments with obvious bewilderment. The precision required to target specific neural pathways while avoiding permanent damage suggests an understanding of biomechanical integration that rivals our best engineers. In the crowd, representatives from dozens of species were frantically updating their reports to their respective governments. What had begun as a routine assessment of a newly discovered species had become something far more significant. Ambassador Lyeth of the Crystalline Collective stood from her observation post, her mineral form refracting the arena lights into prismatic patterns. General Zix-9, I formally request a private consultation with the human delegation. As do I, announced Minister Vorthak of the hive mind swarm, his compound eyes reflecting complex calculations. The tactical implications of these abilities require immediate evaluation. Similar requests came from throughout the arena. Species that had shown nothing but dismissive amusement hours earlier were now clamoring for access to human knowledge and training methods. Colonel Martinez observed the sudden shift in attitude. With professional calm, but internally she was satisfied. The demonstration had achieved exactly what Earth's military strategists had hoped for: recognition of human potential, rather than dismissal as an irrelevant backwater species. Generals, she addressed the judge's platform, Earth appreciates the interest from the galactic community. However, I think it's important to understand what you've actually witnessed today. Enlighten us, Admiral Korthek said, his tentacles coiled with tension. Dr. Chen stepped forward, activating his tablet to display a presentation he had prepared for this exact moment. What you saw was not the limit of human capability. Kenji represents one martial tradition from one region of our world. Earth has dozens of distinct fighting systems, each with its own approaches to combat, energy manipulation, and tactical philosophy. The arena fell silent as the implications sank in. General Throck was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. You're saying there are more humans with these abilities? Thousands, Martinez confirmed. And that's just among our current masters. With proper resources and training facilities, we could scale these capabilities across our entire military structure. Warlord Krex, who had been listening while his system slowly came back online, pulled himself to his full height. Human delegation, I formally request instruction in your combat methods. The request sent shockwaves through the crowd. Warlord Krex had never sought training from anyone. His superiority in combat had been absolute for decades. For him to acknowledge that he could learn from the species he had just faced was unprecedented. Warlord, Kenji said with a respectful bow. It would be an honor to share knowledge with such a skilled warrior, but understand that our methods require dedication that goes beyond physical training. They demand mental discipline, spiritual development, and a willingness to transform one's entire approach to conflict. What do you mean? Asked Commander Vesh. Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward to answer. Human martial arts aren't just fighting techniques, they're philosophies of life. A true master doesn't just learn to fight, they learn to understand conflict itself. When to engage, when to withdraw, how to resolve problems without violence, and how to use minimum force for maximum effect. The concept clearly puzzled many of the alien observers. Their combat traditions focused on maximizing destructive capability and overwhelming opponents through superior force. You're describing a complete military reformation, Admiral Korthex observed. These methods would require restructuring our entire approach to warfare. Which brings us to our proposal, Colonel Martinez said, seizing the moment. Earth requests formal membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition, with recognition as a Class A military contributor. The request caused an immediate uproar. Class A status was reserved for species that could significantly impact galactic security through their military capabilities. It came with substantial privileges, including access to advanced technology, military command positions, and voting rights on major strategic decisions. Absolutely preposterous, General Throck began, but his protest lacked conviction. He had seen what human training could accomplish. "Is it?" asked Dr. Chen. "Your own assessment protocols require demonstration of unique military capabilities that could enhance galactic defense. Have we not provided that demonstration?" General Zix-9 conferred quickly with his fellow judges. The conversation was heated but brief. When he turned back to the delegation, his expression had changed completely. "The demonstration has been illuminating," he admitted. "However, Class A status requires more than individual combat prowess. We need to understand how these capabilities scale to unit tactics, strategic planning, and large-scale conflict resolution." "That can be arranged," Martinez replied confidently. "We propose a joint training exercise, a mixed unit of human instructors and galactic military personnel, working together to develop integrated combat doctrines." "And if we agree to this proposal?" asked Commander Vesh. "Then you'll learn what happens when human adaptability meets galactic resources," Martinez said. "We've shown you what we can accomplish with basic training and no technological enhancement. Imagine what becomes possible when human methods are combined with your advanced equipment and knowledge base." The judges exchanged meaningful glances. Each was calculating the potential advantages their own species could gain from access to human training methods. Ambassador Lyeth spoke for many in the crowd when she said, "The Crystalline Collective supports immediate initiation of joint training protocols. These abilities could revolutionize our defensive capabilities." Minister Vorthak nodded agreement. "The hive mind swarm also requests priority access to human instruction. Our collective consciousness could potentially accelerate the learning process significantly." Similar endorsements came from throughout the arena. Species that had been skeptical or dismissive now competed to express their interest in human partnership. Warlord Krex approached the human delegation directly, moving with the careful respect one warrior shows another. "Human warriors," he said formally, "I offer my personal guarantee of safe passage and honored status within the galactic military community. What you have demonstrated today will be remembered across the stars." Kenji bowed in response. "The honor is ours, Warlord. We look forward to learning from galactic experience just as we hope to share our own knowledge." As the arena began to empty, the conversations continued with an energy that had been completely absent when the humans first arrived. Delegations formed around the human team, each eager to discuss possibilities and partnerships. The betting computers, having finally recalibrated their algorithms, were now showing odds that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. Humanity had gone from galactic afterthought to potential game-changer in the span of a single demonstration. But perhaps the most significant change was visible in the way the aliens now looked at the humans. The dismissive amusement was gone, replaced by respect, curiosity, and something approaching awe. They had learned the most important lesson about humanity. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire evolution turning disadvantages into advantages and impossibilities into merely difficult challenges. 6 months after the demonstration at Vorthak Prime, the Galactic Defense Coalition headquarters buzzed with activity that would have been impossible to imagine before humanity's arrival. The sterile corridors now echoed with sounds that had never been heard in these halls. The rhythmic breathing of meditation exercises, the controlled impacts of martial arts training, and the quiet discussions of philosophical combat theory. Admiral Sarah Martinez, recently promoted to Strategic Integration Command, walked through the newly constructed Human Galactic Training Center with a mixture of pride and amazement. The facility housed the most ambitious military education program in galactic history, bringing together instructors and students from over 200 different species. The results continue to exceed all projections, reported Director Chen, his former academic title replaced with Senior Combat Philosophy Advisor. Integration success rates are running at 93% across all participating species. Through the observation windows, Martinez could see training sessions that would have seemed like fantasy months earlier. A Krillian warrior, whose species had relied on brute strength for millennia, was learning to redirect force through Aikido principles. His forearms, once used only for overwhelming attacks, now moved in fluid patterns that channeled incoming energy rather than opposing it directly. In another training hall, a group of crystalline collective members practiced meditation techniques that allowed them to regulate their internal energy fields with unprecedented precision. Their mineral forms glowed with controlled light as they learned to focus their natural electrical properties into defensive barriers that were both more efficient and less energy-intensive than their previous methods. The hive mind swarm has reported the most dramatic improvements, Chen continued. When they apply human tactical philosophy through their collective consciousness, their coordination reaches levels we're still trying to measure. Martinez nodded, watching a mixed unit of humans and aliens practicing coordinated maneuvers. The sight of a Garathian bear warrior moving in perfect synchronization with a human ninja, their different strengths complementing rather than competing, represented everything the integration program hoped to achieve. What about resistance? She asked. There had to be some species who couldn't adapt to our methods. Surprisingly little, Chen admitted. The Thermic clan initially struggled with the concept of internal energy regulation. Their lava-based biology seemed incompatible with chi manipulation. But Master Nakamura developed a modified approach that uses their natural heat generation as a focusing mechanism. They're now among our most enthusiastic students. At the center of the facility, Kenji led a mixed class through advanced forms training. The student body included representatives from dozens of species, each adapting human principles to their unique physiology. Warlord Krex, now bearing the title of Cross-Species Combat Coordinator, assisted with demonstrations that showed how traditional galactic strength could be enhanced through human tactical philosophy. The most significant development isn't just individual improvement, Chen observed. It's the emergence of hybrid fighting styles that combine galactic advantages with human adaptability. Martinez had seen the reports. Psionic Guild members who learned to focus their mental abilities through martial arts meditation found their powers more precise and less draining. Void Hunters combined their phasing abilities with human stealth techniques to become nearly undetectable. Each species discovered that human methods didn't replace their natural gifts, but enhanced them in ways they had never considered. The impact extended far beyond the training facilities. Galactic military doctrine was being rewritten from the ground up, as strategists incorporated human concepts of adaptive warfare, minimal force projection, and conflict resolution through strategic advantage rather than overwhelming power. General Zix-9 wants to discuss the next phase, Chen said, checking his schedule. The Coalition Council has approved human participation in the Outer Rim defense planning. The Outer Rim Defense Network protected the galaxy's frontier worlds from external threats. Human involvement in its strategic planning represented full acceptance into the galactic military hierarchy, a far cry from the mockery they had faced in the arena months earlier. As they walked toward the command center, Martinez reflected on how completely the situation had transformed. Humanity had entered galactic society as a curiosity, a species so unremarkable that their combat assessment was treated as entertainment. Now they were integral to military planning across hundreds of worlds. There's something else, Chen said quietly. Intelligence reports suggest that news of our training methods has reached beyond Coalition space. Several non-aligned species have been asking about human instructors. The implications were significant. If human combat philosophy spread throughout the galaxy, it could fundamentally alter the balance of power between different factions. In the command center, General Zix-9 waited with a team of senior strategists from across the Coalition. His forearms gestured toward a holographic display showing the galaxy's defense grid. Admiral Martinez, he said, his tone carrying none of the condescension from their first meeting. We need human assessment of our perimeter defense strategy. The display showed massive installations designed to repel invasion through overwhelming firepower. It was an approach that had worked for centuries but required enormous resources and created single points of failure. Martinez studied the hologram with the tactical eye that human military training had sharpened. General, what if instead of trying to stop invaders with brute force, we made it strategically disadvantageous for them to attack in the first place? Explain, Admiral Cortex requested, his tentacles coiled with interest. Human military philosophy emphasizes winning battles before they're fought, Martinez began. Instead of massive static defenses, we could create a network of smaller, mobile response units that make invasion costly, regardless of where it occurs. The concept challenged everything the galactic military establishment had believed about defense strategy. But after witnessing what human adaptability could accomplish, the alien strategists were prepared to listen. The resources saved from building fewer massive installations could be invested in training and mobility, she continued, and enemy-facing defenders who can adapt quickly to any situation would find invasion far more difficult than one facing static fortifications, however powerful. General Throck, whose own strategic thinking had been transformed by exposure to human methods, nodded slowly. A distributed defense network that turns the entire frontier into an adaptive response system. Exactly, Martinez confirmed. And with human-trained personnel throughout the network, each installation becomes capable of far more than its size would suggest. The discussion that followed lasted hours, with implications and possibilities explored from every angle. By the end, the coalition's defense strategy had been fundamentally reconceptualized around principles of adaptability, efficiency, and strategic flexibility. As the meeting concluded, Warlord Krex approached Martinez privately. Admiral, I want you to know that what happened in the arena changed more than military doctrine. It changed how we think about strength itself. How so? Martinez asked. For centuries, we measured power by obvious advantages: size, speed, natural weapons, technology. But humans taught us that true strength lies in the ability to adapt and overcome, regardless of initial disadvantage. He gestured toward the training facility where aliens and humans work together, learning from each other. Look at what we've accomplished in just 6 months. Every species has improved beyond what we thought possible, not by becoming more of what they already were, but by learning to be more than they ever imagined. Martinez smiled. That's the most important lesson humanity has to offer. Limitations exist to be transcended, not accepted. As evening fell over the coalition headquarters, the training continued under artificial lighting. Across the galaxy, human instructors were working with alien students, sharing techniques that had taken Earth's warriors centuries to develop. In return, humans were learning to apply their adaptability to technologies and concepts that would have seemed impossible months earlier. The mockery that had greeted Earth's delegation at Vorthak Prime seemed like a memory from another era. Humanity had proven that the smallest, seemingly weakest species could reshape the galaxy's understanding of combat, strategy, and the very nature of strength itself. And in training halls across hundreds of worlds, warriors who had once relied solely on natural advantages were learning the most human of lessons: that true power comes not from what you are born with, but from what you choose to become.